What if the most powerful medicine you could possibly find isn't behind a pharmacy counter? What if it's growing in the ditch at the end of your road, in the field behind your house, in the crack of a sidewalk you walk past every day? For most of human history, that was simply reality. Our great-grandparents knew these plants by sight, which leaf stopped bleeding, which root cleared a chest infection, which flower brought a fever down. That knowledge passed from parent to child across generations that had no choice but to pay attention. And then, in the span of a few decades, nearly all of it was forgotten. But the plants didn't go anywhere. That's what we're doing today on Sacred Roots. 20 plants that healers across cultures and centuries trusted with their lives, now being validated compound by modern research. Some of these you've walked past 1,000 times. Number 17 has been used for over 2,000 years, and modern science just confirmed it works against antibiotic-resistant bacteria. Subscribe and ring the notification bell. Now let's get into it. Plant number 1, Calendula. We begin with a flower that soldiers carried into war, not as a symbol but as medicine. Medieval armies included calendula flowers in their field supplies because when you had a wound and no surgeon within miles, this orange bloom could keep infection at bay and help tissue close clean. They called it the war flower. Calendula officinalis produces cheerful orange and yellow flowers from spring through frost, and those petals are dense with triterpenes and flavonoids, compounds with documented anti-inflammatory and antimicrobial properties. Multiple clinical trials have confirmed that calendula extracts accelerate wound healing, including burns and post-surgical tissue, measurably faster than standard treatment alone. To make a simple preparation, dry the flower heads, infuse them in olive oil for 4 to 6 weeks, strain, and use as a salve. Applied to cuts, burns, abrasions, and inflamed skin, it works, and it always has. Pharmaceutical companies cannot patent a flower, which is precisely why this one was allowed to fade from collective memory. Plant number 2, sea buckthorn. There is a plant so valued by Russian space medicine that cosmonauts were given its oil to protect against radiation damage in orbit. Sea buckthorn, Hippophae rhamnoides, and its bright orange berries have been used in Tibetan, Chinese, and Russian traditional medicine for centuries to heal skin and mucous membranes from the inside out. What makes it extraordinary is a rare omega-7 fatty acid in the oil of both berries and seeds. Omega-7 supports mucous membrane integrity throughout the entire body, gut lining, respiratory tract, skin, eyes. Clinical trials confirm improvements in dry and inflamed skin, eczema, atopic dermatitis, dry eye syndrome, and vaginal dryness following menopause. Sea buckthorn disappeared from Western medicine because it grows in remote regions most Westerners never reached. The oil is now available as a supplement. Most topical products sit on the surface of skin. Sea buckthorn actually rebuilds it. Plant number 3, comfrey. Comfrey, Symphytum officinale, was called knit bone. Not because it sounded interesting, because it knit bone. Generations of healers applied comfrey root preparations to fractures, sprains, and deep bruises and observed faster healing. Modern chemistry explains why. Allantoin, concentrated in comfrey root, actively promotes cell proliferation, signaling your cells to divide and replicate faster, speeding tissue repair at a fundamental biological level. Multiple peer-reviewed clinical trials have demonstrated that topical comfrey root extract significantly reduces pain and improves function in back injuries, ankle sprains, and osteoarthritis. One essential note: comfrey is for external use only. The plant contains pyrrolizidine alkaloids toxic to the liver when taken internally, but applied over an injury as a salve or cream, it is both safe and remarkably effective. Comfrey got sidelined by those internal use concerns, but the casualty was one of the most effective soft tissue healing agents nature has produced. Plant number 4, mullein. You have almost certainly seen mullein without knowing it. That tall plant with thick, felt-covered leaves and a long spike of yellow flowers growing in vacant lots and along roadsides. Verbascum thapsus. For hundreds of years, it was the first plant any serious herbalist reached for with chest congestion, bronchitis, a deep productive cough, or stubborn respiratory mucus. The leaves contain saponins, natural expectorants that help airways move mucus up and out, rather than letting it pool into infection. Recent reviews confirm mullein's anti-inflammatory and antimicrobial effects on respiratory tissue. The critical distinction from pharmaceutical cough suppressants matters here. Suppressants stop the cough. Mullein assists it, helping your lungs accomplish what they are already trying to do. That is not symptom management. That is healing. Mullein was always available. That is exactly why it was forgotten when profit-driven medicine replaced it with something that could be packaged and sold. Plant number 5, plantain weed. Native Americans called it white man's footprint, because wherever European settlers walked, this plant seemed to follow. Plantago major grows in lawns, trails, and sidewalk cracks everywhere. The leaves contain aucubin, allantoin, and mucilage compounds with documented wound healing, anti-inflammatory, and antimicrobial activity. A clinical trial in Iran found plantain ointment improved healing of second-degree burns better than standard topical treatment. A fresh leaf, bruised by chewing or crushing, applied directly to a cut, sting, or bite, reduces pain and swelling within minutes. Plantain was forgotten because of abundance. We were taught that medicine should be rare, precise, and expensive, that something growing as a weed cannot possibly be pharmaceutically meaningful. That assumption is wrong. Plantain is immediate, free, everywhere, and it works. Plant number 6, yarrow. Yarrow, Achillea millefolium, carries a name rooted in mythology, named for Achilles, who in Greek legend used this plant to stanch bleeding wounds on the battlefield. Whether or not the story is literally true, the pharmacological reason it persisted 3,000 years is not myth. Yarrow contains compounds with genuine hemostatic effects. They shorten bleeding time and promote clotting. Soldiers throughout history carried dried yarrow as standard field equipment, and the science confirms they were right. But yarrow does more. It is simultaneously a vulnerary, an anti-inflammatory, a mild antimicrobial, and a fever-reducing diaphoretic when taken as hot tea. Crushed fresh leaves applied to a cut stop bleeding and reduce infection risk simultaneously. A hot tea of the aerial parts brings down fevers and eases digestive cramping. For anyone who spends time outdoors, knowing what yarrow is and what it does is information worth having. Plant number 7, self-heal. When a plant earns the common name self-heal, or heal-all, that name carries accumulated generations of observation. Prunella vulgaris received those names because practitioners across multiple cultures, independently, reached for this plant when confronted with wounds, sore throats, mouth ulcers, and inflamed tissue. Modern research is validating that collective judgment. Reviews confirm genuine wound healing and anti-inflammatory properties. And one significant finding: self-heal disrupts bacterial biofilms, the protective structures bacteria construct to shield themselves from antibiotics and immune responses. Self-heal works particularly well on mucous membranes, the mouth and throat. A strong infusion used as a gargle for canker sores and sore throats can produce relief within hours. Fresh leaves crushed and applied to minor cuts provide rapid antimicrobial and anti-inflammatory action. The plant grows in lawns and meadows, overlooked as a common weed. It was forgotten because it is common. It remains one of the more versatile first response healers in the plant world. Plant number 8, agrimony. Agrimony, Agrimonia eupatoria, was one of the most reached-for plants in medieval European herbal medicine for anything involving the throat, mouth, or digestive tract. It produces tall spikes of small yellow flowers along meadow edges, and the whole aerial plant is medicinal. Traditional healers used a strong tea as a gargle for pharyngitis, tonsillitis, and laryngitis, and as a tea for mild diarrhea and digestive upset. The chemistry centers on tannins, astringent compounds that tone and tighten inflamed tissue. When used as a gargle, those tannins physically contract the swollen tissue of your throat, reducing inflammation and creating an environment inhospitable to pathogens. The same astringent action that helps an inflamed throat also helps a gut lining irritated by mild gastroenteritis. Agrimony tastes mild and slightly bitter, more pleasant than many medicinal herbs, which made it an accessible everyday remedy. For the mild sore throat that builds slowly with seasonal illness, Agrimony as a gargle remains one of the gentlest effective options available. Plant number 9, white horehound. Before cough drops were a product, they were a recipe, and the main ingredient was white horehound. Marubium vulgare was so widely trusted as a respiratory medicine that people boiled it into actual candy, sweetening a strong tea down to a syrup and letting it harden into lozenges. Horehound candy was sold in pharmacies and general stores well into the 20th century. The active compound marubian stimulates bronchial secretions, loosening thick mucus and helping airways move it up and out. European herbal monographs still recommend horehound for productive coughs and bronchitis. The critical distinction from pharmaceutical cough suppressants is the direction of their action. Suppressants stop the cough reflex. Horehound makes the cough more productive. The infection clears faster because the lungs accomplish what they are already trying to do. Suppressing a productive cough is treating the symptom while prolonging the cause. Horehound treats the cause, a more medically honest approach to respiratory illness. Plant number 10, boneset. Eupatorium perfoliatum, boneset, earned its name from the old colloquial term for influenza, break-bone fever, named for the deep muscular aches that accompany serious flu. Ethnobotanical records describe it as a diaphoretic and fever reducer that helps the body mount an effective febrile immune response rather than suppressing it. Traditional use was specific. At the first appearance of flu symptoms, a hot, strong cup of boneset tea was drunk, followed by bed rest under heavy covers to sweat, supporting the fever on the understanding that fever is the immune system working. Boneset grows in wet meadows, producing flat clusters of white flowers in late summer. The tea is intensely bitter, one of the most bitter medicinal teas in common use. That bitterness was understood as part of the medicine. Bitter compounds trigger immune responses, and experienced herbalists often considered the bitterness itself pharmacologically active. Boneset was displaced by vaccines and antivirals, but for the general influenza-like respiratory illnesses that still cycle through populations every year, it remains a powerful traditional first response. Plant number 11, blue vervain. Old herbalists called certain plants nervines, plants that calm an overstressed nervous system rather than simply sedating it. Blue vervain, Verbena hastata, was one of the most reliable, described by traditional practitioners for the individual who is chronically wound too tight. Overthinking, unable to rest, holding tension in the neck and shoulders, waking at night with thoughts that won't stop. This is not an archaic profile. Animal research and modern herbal reviews suggest genuine anxiolytic effects, reducing nervous tension without the sedation or dependence of pharmaceutical anxiety medications. Traditional use was a cup of vervain tea in the evening to help the nervous system release accumulated tension, or during the day for stress that expresses itself as physical tightness and headache. The plant grows in wet meadows and ditches, producing tall spikes of tiny violet-blue flowers. Vervain was forgotten as pharmaceutical anxiety medications became standard, medications that are effective but carry costs in dependence, withdrawal, and side effects. For mild to moderate everyday stress, blue vervain offers a gentler approach with a centuries-long track record. Plant number 12, elecampane. Elecampane, Inula helenium, belongs to the category of herbs that rebuild damaged tissue rather than fight acute infection. It is not the herb you reach for on the first day of a chest cold. It is the herb you reach for 6 weeks after pneumonia when your lungs are still not right. The root contains sesquiterpene lactones with documented antitussive and antimicrobial effects, and recent laboratory research has confirmed antimicrobial activity against respiratory pathogens. Traditional reviews describe its use for chronic cough, asthma, and lingering lung disease, taken in small doses over weeks or months, not as a quick fix, but as a rebuilding tonic. Elecampane fell out of use partly because its timeline doesn't fit the modern medical framework. We want results in days. Elecampane works in weeks, but for people with chronically compromised lungs, recurrent chest infections, post-viral respiratory weakness, lingering bronchial inflammation, there is something in this deep-root medicine that antibiotics and bronchodilators simply do not address. It rebuilds rather than suppresses. That is sometimes the more valuable kind of healing. Plant number 13, toothache plant. Most plants on this list work gradually, through consistent use over days or weeks. This one works in seconds. The toothache plant, Spilanthes acmella, produces small yellow and red cone-shaped flowers containing a compound called spilanthol. Chew a fresh flower, and within 10 to 15 seconds, your entire mouth begins to tingle, then goes numb. The effect is immediate, unmistakable, and lasts 30 minutes or more. Traditional healers across Africa, South America, and Southeast Asia used this for toothaches, mouth ulcers, sore throats, and any painful oral condition requiring local anesthesia. Reviews of Spilanthes species confirm both local anesthetic and analgesic effects. To use it, chew a fresh flower or leaf and allow the compounds to coat the painful area. This does not address the underlying cause of a toothache. A dentist is still necessary, but it provides genuine, pharmacologically real pain relief when nothing else is immediately available. First-time users are consistently surprised by how strong and immediate the effect is. It is not subtle. It is not placebo. The plant was simply never profitable enough to survive the commercial transition of Western medicine. Plant number 14, Oregon grape. Oregon grape, Mahonia aquifolium, is a spiky evergreen shrub native to the Pacific Northwest, and it carries something that distinguishes it from most herbal skin remedies: actual clinical evidence for treating psoriasis. Not traditional use alone, published clinical trials showing statistically significant improvement in psoriasis and atopic dermatitis symptoms with consistent topical application of Oregon grape extract. The active compounds are alkaloids including berberine, with documented antimicrobial and anti-inflammatory effects on skin tissue. The bright yellow inner bark of the roots and stems is the medicinal part. Results are not instant. Consistent use over weeks is required, and improvement is gradual. But for psoriasis and eczema, chronic, stubborn conditions that respond poorly to most interventions, Oregon grape offers a botanical option with clinical backing. That is a rarer thing than it should be. The plant fell out of wide use because it grew in only one region. That has changed. The evidence is now available, and so is the plant. Plant number 15, yellow dock. Old herbalists used a category they called alteratives, plants that work slowly on the body's internal processing to gradually improve elimination and detoxification. Yellow dock, Rumex crispus, was one of the most trusted, used for sluggish digestion, chronic constipation, liver congestion, and the stubborn skin problems that seem connected to poor internal cleansing. The root contains bitter compounds and anthraquinones that stimulate bile production, improve digestive motility, and support liver detoxification. The strongly bitter and astringent taste is itself part of the mechanism. Bitter taste triggers bile flow, and bile flow is central to both digestion and the clearance of metabolic waste. Yellow dock works slowly and requires patience. It is not an aggressive laxative. It supports the body's natural digestive rhythm rather than forcing a response. Modern herbal reviews link consistent use with improved digestion and resolution of chronic skin conditions that correlate with impaired elimination. For people with chronic low-grade digestive sluggishness, this is a more sustainable approach than pharmaceutical interventions that override rather than support the body's natural function. Plant number 16, Usnea. Strictly speaking, Usnea is not a plant. It is a lichen, a symbiotic organism of fungus and algae, hanging from tree branches like pale greenish-gray hair. In forested, unpolluted areas, you have likely seen it without registering what it was. And this quiet, overlooked organism produces one of the most effective natural antimicrobial compounds currently known: usnic acid and related compounds with strong documented antimicrobial activity against bacteria, including some strains resistant to conventional antibiotics. Recent reviews confirm effectiveness against multiple pathogenic bacteria and some fungi. Traditional use was primarily topical. Moistened Usnea applied directly to wounds as an antimicrobial dressing, or prepared as an alcohol tincture for antiseptic use. This was not wishful thinking. The compounds genuinely fight infection. For anyone in wilderness environments, knowing that Usnea on nearby trees can serve as a legitimate antimicrobial dressing is practically valuable information. Harvest sustainably. Usnea grows slowly. Take only what has already fallen. Plant number 17, barberry. This is the plant I mentioned at the beginning, used for over 2,000 years, and modern science just confirmed it works against antibiotic-resistant bacteria. Berberis vulgaris, barberry, appears in ancient Persian, Ayurvedic, and Chinese medicine going back millennia, used for digestive infections, liver conditions, and inflammatory states. The compound berberine, concentrated in the bright yellow inner bark of roots and stems, is now one of the most intensively studied plant compounds in modern pharmacology. The evidence spans multiple categories: antimicrobial effects against bacteria, fungi, and parasites including antibiotic-resistant strains, anti-inflammatory effects, and improvements in blood glucose control comparable to metformin in clinical trials for type 2 diabetes. This is the rare case where traditional use and modern clinical evidence converge completely. Ancient healers used barberry for the exact conditions that modern pharmacology now confirms berberine addresses. Barberry was sidelined when synthetic antibiotics arrived. With antibiotic resistance now a global health crisis, berberine-containing plants are receiving serious scientific reconsideration. The ancient medicine is becoming cutting-edge again. Plant number 18, red clover. Red clover is so common, carpeting meadows, roadsides, and untreated lawns across the temperate world, that it is essentially invisible. Trifolium pratense. Most people have walked over thousands of these plants without knowing they were walking through a medicine field. Red clover is one of the richest plant sources of isoflavones, phytoestrogens that interact with estrogen receptors in the body. Clinical research has shown significant benefits for menopausal hot flashes and related symptoms with consistent supplementation, making it one of the better-studied botanical options for women navigating menopause. The flowers also contain anti-inflammatory compounds, with traditional uses for chronic skin conditions like eczema and psoriasis. The flower heads, harvested from clean areas and dried, make a mild, slightly sweet tea pleasant enough to drink daily. Long-term consistent use is the traditional approach, weeks or months for chronic conditions rather than acute symptom relief. Red clover was forgotten not because it failed, but because it was everywhere, and we learned to see abundance as evidence of worthlessness. Abundance was a gift. Plant number 19, sassafras. Sassafras. Sassafras albidum has one of the most complicated histories in North American herbal medicine. Native peoples used the root bark for fevers, rheumatic pain, and digestive conditions. European settlers adopted these uses enthusiastically. Sassafras became a commercial commodity, flavoring root beer through the 19th and early 20th centuries, while herbalists prescribed it for the same inflammatory and febrile conditions indigenous healers had addressed for generations. Then modern chemistry identified safrole, a compound in sassafras oil, as a potential carcinogen and hepatotoxin in large amounts. Based on animal studies, internal use of sassafras was restricted by regulatory agencies. It belongs here as an important lesson, rather than an active recommendation. Traditional medicine and modern science must work together. Traditional use points us toward what to investigate. Modern analysis tells us how to use it safely, or when to find a safer alternative. The long history of use did not make sassafras completely safe at all doses, and the modern caution does not invalidate the genuine effects traditional practitioners observed. Both things are true simultaneously. Sassafras is part of medicinal plant history, a reminder that natural does not automatically mean safe. Plant number 20, meadowsweet. We saved this one for last because it tells the complete story of what happened between traditional plant medicine and modern pharmaceutical chemistry. Filipendula umaria, meadowsweet, is the plant that aspirin was based on. Before aspirin existed as a synthetic compound, people used meadowsweet tea for pain, fever, inflammation, and, here is where it becomes remarkable, for soothing the stomach at the same time. The flowers and leaves contain salicylates, the chemical family from which synthetic aspirin was derived. When 19th century chemists first synthesized aspirin, they were extracting and intensifying a compound that meadowsweet had contained all along. But here is what was lost in the extraction: the whole plant. Meadowsweet does not cause the stomach irritation and bleeding that aspirin can produce. Traditional herbalists specifically used it for stomach inflammation, for gastric ulcers and hyperacidity, while simultaneously providing pain and fever relief. Modern research has confirmed both properties: analgesic and anti-inflammatory effects from the salicylate content, and gastroprotective effects from additional compounds in the flower and leaf. The same plant, both actions, simultaneously. Meadowsweet grows in wet meadows and along stream sides, still available, still working. The whole plant offers pain relief without gastric damage. The isolated compound offers stronger relief, with side effects requiring their own medications to manage. Sometimes the natural version was the better version. We just stopped believing that was possible. If this video opened something for you, if it shifted how you see the field behind your house or the weeds at the edge of your lawn, hit that like button now. It helps Sacred Roots reach the people searching for this knowledge. Drop a comment and tell us which plant surprised you most: the aspirin connection in meadowsweet, the antibiotic resistance evidence for barberry, the instant numbing of the toothache plant. Subscribe and ring the notification bell. Every week on Sacred Roots, we go deeper into the healing knowledge the modern world tried to leave behind, and that the earth has been quietly preserving all along. The pharmacy was always outside, it was always free, and it has never stopped working.